We've had 50 years of DIY spaces in Denver, and they have built the city's creative culture into a world-class destination. And we've never had a ghost ship fire. The ghost ship fire was tragic, but I think that in a lot of people's minds, the spaces that we're operating within in the city as far as DIY spaces go are a lot worse than people think they're a lot worse than they actually are. Former mayors have been in these spaces. Everyone who works at arts and venues have been in these spaces. Debbie Ortega, I've seen you in these spaces before. These spaces should be celebrated and supported, and instead you guys have been attacking this community. You're undermining creatives by getting rid of our incubator spaces with this move, and you're wiping out opportunities for young artists to hone their respective crafts. This bill doesn't solve the problems, and in fact, you're driving people further underground and potentially into less safe spaces. You're asking people to take risks with their housing and livelihoods when they are in these spaces because it is what they can afford. And the reason for that usually is because the landlords have no interest in fixing the spaces up for precisely that reason, which is why they let us have the spaces in the first place. So you're asking people who don't own these spaces to invest in them, down to hiring an architect, and nothing in this bill specifies any help from the city for people to do so, despite the DIY fund, which would never have been enough, nor does it specify the landlord's responsibility. In many of these cases, people are on month-to-month leases. They don't even know if they will be there 2 years to sink thousands of dollars into a space, so the landlord can later rent it for more money or tear it down. You aren't taking our reality into account at all. And for how many of these spaces have functioned over the years, you're taking an awful lot of granted about the landlord-tenant relationships. Asking people to turn themselves in is asking them to take an enormous risk. You're not considering how tight the housing market is, and in situations where artists are living in spaces, how desperately they're trying to keep a roof over their heads. No one will want to take a risk with their housing, much less their DIY space or studio, when it's all they can afford. And the bill says nothing about what will happen if they don't turn themselves in, not giving people the option to use this program if they were simply uninformed about its existence. That seems really punitive. I was hoping I would see a more reality-based solution from you guys. Artists and musicians can't afford to hire architects for spaces we don't own, and most landlords will not. If you compare the non-solution to the generous response that Oakland had towards its creative community, I think Denver should be a little ashamed, truth be told. Real estate and rent prices are already driving artists out of the city. Now this hostility we've felt through the winter towards the community could simply convince young artists there's no reason to stay here. A town bereft of artists isn't a world-class city, it's a soulless shell. You're treating people like criminals for trying to survive in this town right now, from the homeless to this town's artists. The world is watching.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say one more thing. What kind of place Denver becomes has nothing to do with what you build and everything to do with what you destroy.
Thank you.